Hey, folks, this is Tony Carey. We're both listening to Talking Blues. If you don't know who I am, Google me, and nice to be here.
I'm interested in starting off by asking you, how did music enter your life?
Harry Belafonte and Joan Baez records. My mother was a musical consumer, but she had really good taste. First records I could, and some symphonic stuff. We had a record collection. I was born in 1953, so about 1957 or 58, I became aware of Harry Belafonte, Joan Baez, Rimsky-Korsakov, the Scheherazade Symphony, and I've always been musical. There was a piano in the house, and from what my parents told me, they couldn't get me off it since I was 4 or 5. And if you'd asked me at 5 years old what I was, I would have said I was a musician. As as stupid as that sounds, and I've never had a real job, so it worked out.
You were self-taught.
No. I'm kind of keyboardy self-taught, and for a while I was a keyboarder, but I studied contrabass, stand-up bass in orchestras, and in fact, that was one of my big life decisions. Am I going to be a rock and roll musician or a classical musician? I was all New England Orchestra in 1971, and so I was fairly good at it. I got accepted to all these music schools that my dad couldn't afford, like Juilliard and Berkeley and Rochester. There's one that's close to you, actually, in upstate New York, and didn't do that. Went the rock and roll way, and at 17, the last day of school was in June of 1971. Me and a buddy stuck out our thumbs and hit the road.
To New England. Why New England?
Well, I'm from California, and my born in the artichoke capital of the world. That's Watsonville, California. Grew up in Turlock, California, which is a little 2 stoplight, 3-cow town. And my dad sold fertilizer and herbicide and pesticides for a big chemical company. And he was really good at it. And they bumped him all the way from this little nowhere town in the Central Valley, San Joaquin Valley in California, to a product manager. So we landed in Westport, Connecticut, which is like one of the 10 richest towns in the United States. And he commuted into New York City, and he from Westport for several years, and that's where I spent the last 2 years of high school. And it actually was a genius coincidence, because I don't know if I would have ever stepped foot out of the Central Valley of California. Most of my friends didn't, but Westport's very cosmopolitan, right next to New York City. A lot of money there. Not that we had any, but one of the best musical high schools in the country, as it happens. Just dumb luck. That's it in a nutshell.
What was that move like for you at that age, which would have been as an older teenager? What was that transition like?
15. I was 15. I was 15 because I was a younger. I went to started first grade at 5, but I was 15 or turned 15, actually, because we went before the school year started in late summer. Oh, after the moon, in 1969, but after I watched the cowboy walk on the moon in Turlock, and then woke up in Westport. What was it like? Oh, I don't know. I'm generally an oblivious person. I mean, where where I am, that's where the party is, or at least where my focus is. And it was a big event, huge adventure, just like coming to Europe for the first time. It was like you couldn't get farther away from Turlock, California, almost geographically, almost literally, than Long Island Sound, Westport, Connecticut. So, but what was it like? I mean, I don't know. I made friends. I played in bands. I had exactly the same haircut that I do now, which is basically none. Uh, I was a summer of love hippie, in 1967, and still am.
And then you started a band. I presume is this the band Blessings?
Now, lots of bands. There were tons of bands before that. In fact, one of them was so good. This is a funny story. We played at our own scene. I played at my own senior prom, which is good because I didn't have a girlfriend. And uh, in fact, we beat the Young Rascals out for the job.
Really?
Yeah, we were really, really, really good. And some of the members of that band, one of them was Neil Steubenhaus, who was a legendary session bass player and president of the Los Angeles Musicians Union later. So we were actually very, very good cover band. It wasn't original stuff. And Blessings was a thing after high school. I took off with my buddy Michael Mugridge, and we had heard of a singer. He's up in New Hampshire. We hitchhiked up to New Hampshire and started this little Neil Young, Crosby, Stills and Nash kind of folk rock trio, I guess. And just being in the right place at the right time. We found a manager who had connections in New York and got this enormous record deal. I was 19 with ABC Dunhill Records in Hollywood, West Hollywood, California. So I turned around twice after leaving high school, and there I was on the Sunset Strip in 1974.
So, what kind of band was that? What kind of band was Blessings?
Country rock, Poco, like it was pre-Eagles, so but like the Eagles would be later. Not country rock, so pop rock. America would be a good example. They were a trio.
And were you writing songs by this time?
Yeah, yeah, sure. You had to write songs to get a record deal, and yeah, we were writing. I wasn't the lead singer. We had sung a lot of three-part harmonies. I played electric piano and bass
And did you sing at that point?
as a harmony singer. We had a lot of our songs were very like that's why I say like America or Crosby, Stills and Nash. A lot of three-part harmony.
I thought I read somewhere that you didn't consider yourself a singer,
I still don't. What are you talking about?
but that until you did your albums, like even then,
My fifth record, by the way. That's when I started to sing.
I want to get to that. But I find that very interesting that
Yeah.
singing wasn't a big part of your growing up. Writing was. When did the idea of writing songs? When did that become a thing for you?
All when I was 11 or 12, but of course they were terrible. Your first 150 songs are always terrible, or first 50, or whatever, And but from really, really early on, concretely, I saw Elton John on his first American tour in 1971 in the winter. He played with his trio. They didn't have Davy Johnstone yet. It was him and Dee Murray and Nigel Olsson on drums, and he just blew me out of the room. He was so great. Imagine that a really cool songs with just like a piano trio basically, and that reawakened my interest in songwriting. And then as I'd left school and we'd started this band, I mean it's obvious we needed songs. I mean you can't be the new Beatles like everybody wanted to be unless you could write some songs, or the new Grateful Dead or whatever. You have to have some material. So we did our best.
And then when you get signed to a major label so early in your life, very quickly at the age of 19, what does that do for you? Like, what does that do to your ego?
I don't have an ego. I never have. I'm oblivious. I really am. I doesn't do anything at all. The uh, or maybe I have such an ego that it's just not. Well, I'm do this because I'm that good. I don't know. I didn't. I never thought of it that way. In in retrospect, and I'm not really retrospective. I don't really think about that kind of stuff. No, I mean, I figured it's natural progression. I mean, we started a band, we wrote some songs, we thought they were pretty good. Somebody else obviously did too. So they flew us out to Hollywood and Sunset Strip, and we spent a long time trying to get a record made with Gary Katz producing, who had just produced Steely Dan. And by that time, we had a bass player and a drummer, and the record never got finished because Gary Katz was an actual disaster in our case. Steely Dan was famous for Donald and Walter, they made their first record with a whole band. Then they fired everybody, used session guys. The first thing Gary Katz did when we got into the, I think, Village Recorders, Sound City in the Valley, was uh, Gary arranged for everybody to be fired except the original, like the bass player and the drummer, to be fired, and wouldn't let anybody play on the album except me. I could play piano. I was allowed. So calling this series of, I mean, with Jeff Picaro, I met Mike Picaro played bass, Jeff played drums. We had Larry Carlton, we had Skunk Baxter, we had Dean Parks, all these LA legends, which is so ultimately self-defeating because the very thing that they had signed was these charming teenage kids who had a look and a sound, and who his songs were, they thought they were commercial, or they wouldn't have signed us to a record deal, and given this to this New York sharpie that his idea of making a record was to fire everybody and just hire session cracks to record everything. So we were there in the studio for months and months and months and months, like a year, and nothing came of it
And
ever.
this is your first encounter with the music business.
Well, no, we'd made demos to get. I'd been, I mean, I played gigs since I was
Right, but I mean, I'm
13,
sorry, the
and
record business.
the record. That was my first encounter with the record business. Yes, it was.
Were you disillusioned by that, or did you understand what was going on?
I was oblivious. I was having a lot of fun. There was way too many drugs, and the whole town was high on cocaine. This is Hollywood, California, in 1974. The whole town was high. I was hanging out at the Rainbow Bar and Grill every night. I was having a ball. No, I was. Listen, even 10 years later, I was smarter. But at that time, I have no idea. I thought, well, this maybe is the way it works.
And very quickly, you wind up joining Rainbow.
Well, relatively quickly. It was summer of '75. So really, it's a year and some months
Right, but you're
later.
still a young kid. Like, you're probably 22 around that time?
I was 22 when I left the band. I
Oh,
was I
okay.
was
So,
maybe I'm lying. I was 20. I think it was 23 when I left the band. But yeah, young kid, sure. And the way that happened is we were rehearsing at SIR, which is Studio Instrument Rentals. This is where all the cool guys rehearse when they have ABC Dunhill Records paying the bills. And Jeff Picaro was playing drums, the great Jeff Picaro. And his brother Mike was on bass, and I was on Hammond. And our two guys were playing electric guitars, the original guys. And Richie happened to be one studio or two studios over, and he'd found his whole Rainbow lineup, except he needed a keyboard player. And he'd flown in Mark Stein from the Vanilla Fudge. He'd flown in Eddie Jobson from Roxy Music. So anybody and everybody that he thought could play actually replace John Lord, for him at the time. And I guess he heard me. I'm always been loud, loud and oblivious. That's going to be on my gravestone. And he heard me through what cumulatively 8 walls, and sent somebody over and asked if I wanted to audition for Rainbow. Now, had there been any progress at all getting our record finished, or any hope of getting our record finished inside of it, would have said, no, I got a band. I'm in we got a record deal. But I was ready to make the jump. I didn't need any arm twisting. And Richie was a big deal in 1974. They just played the California Jam, where he did that wonderful guitar
to the
smash.
camera.
Legend. Yeah. $100,000 for that camera, by the way. And because it was one of those old school, it looked like a
Right.
refrigerator, and it wasn't like today. Well, it wasn't like taking a selfie. $100,000 that cost when he broke that camera. And anyway, so I was all impressed as hell with that. I thought that was some great stuff, and I like any kind of music. I didn't care, and sure, hard rock. Well, it's something to do, get me out of this rut, because the whole blessings things was just getting sillier and sillier. I mean, I'd never ever accept anything like that today. But if I didn't know that now, what I don't know then, or whatever the lyric was from Bob Seger, in Against the Wind, in hindsight is 2020. So Richie, this is funny too. Richie sent a guy over. It was actually Jimmy Bain, the bass player. Said, "Do you want to audition for Richie's putting a band together?" And Man on a Silver Mountain had been on the radio because he did that with Ronnie's old band, Elf. And it was out. And I was very much aware of who Richie was and what he was doing. Everyone, the whole world was. And I called my father from Los Angeles. I called him. I said, "Hey, Dad, guess what? I'm going to be a rock star." And he says, "I thought you already were." I said, "No, I mean a real one." He had a good sense of humor. So that was cute.
That's quite a jump from a band that's trying to record an album for months and months and maybe years
Yeah.
and not getting anything done to being in one of the bigger rock bands of its time.
Most influential, not bigger. We weren't that big. We were playing like 2,000 to 3,000 seaters in New York and London, a little bit bigger, but in some places we were opening. We opened for Jethro Tull. We opened for Heart. We weren't that big in the beginning. Later, we were headlining the Budokan
Right.
in Tokyo, which is 15,000 people. But a very influential band because everybody was looking to see what Richie was going to do after Purple, and everybody was listening, as it were,
And
the whole world.
but all of a sudden you're touring the world and you're still a young early 20s keyboard player.
Best best time to do it.
True, much younger than the rest of the band. What was that experience like for you
Yeah.
to join that band as a musician? What did you get out of it?
Musically, it was very fulfilling because there was no slouches and there's no flies on that band. I mean, Cozy Powell, Ronnie Dio, Richie Blackmore, Jimmy Bain, they're all excellent, wonderful players musically. So I just felt fell right into it, and I thought, well, this is great. This is like falling off a log, and it was. It was easy to play. They just have you get the concept. Okay, it's loud, it's hard rock. One eye on John Lord and one eye on Rick Wakeman. Just what are they doing? So kind of ease my way in and all that. Um, that was the music. Musically, I never ever had a problem with Rainbow. I always had a lot of fun. Except that we played too fast live. That was before click tracks. These days, the drummer's got a click in his ear, and they're every show. There's no show, and anybody that says they don't do this is lying. Every show is supplemented somehow with
Right.
cues. Either there's a keyboard part coming in, like with Van Halen, even 25 years ago, they had a keyboard player behind the stage, that you couldn't see, or they're flying in background vocal tracks. So now this big controversy that says Nikki Sixx didn't play on the last Motley Crue tour.
Right.
He mimed it all and it came from tape. And what the fuck? My opinion on that is why not? I mean, anything that works, works. I mean, the kids aren't going to see if Nikki Sixx is a good bass player. He's what he is. He's Nikki Sixx. They're going for a show. So,
Musically,
what was it? What was the question? Speaking of oblivious,
that's quite a leap to be touring the world.
a leap from what? I was already ready for Ed Sullivan when I was 12. I mean, a leap from what? I mean, everything seemed to me to be a natural progression.
Were you writing your own stuff at that point?
No, I wasn't. I was playing pretty much Richie's music.
And if I would have asked you at that point, what do you see the future to be? Was it just being in Rainbow?
No, definitely not. I was definitely not a heavy metal gunslinger keyboard player. Definitely not.
But the fact that you're definitely not, and then you just get this gig based on the fact that he heard you
Yeah.
in the other room is pretty impressive.
Well, yeah, I guess it's impressive, but I'm pretty good. I mean, whatever. I was good. I was, I'm not. I'm never going to say I'm better than anybody because I'm not. I just goof around, but I'm a good bluffer, and I bluffed my way through Rainbow. I bluffed my way through the last 70 years. I'll be 70 in October.
But it's okay. So
You're trying to get me to say something, but I'm not going to say it.
I don't want to say no.
It wasn't a big shock. It wasn't a big shock. It wasn't like throwing me into the deep end or anything. It all felt very organic.
No, I guess I'm more curious about what your goals might have been at that point. I mean, being in a band that's touring the world.
Have fun. Have fun and get a lot of pussy. You could edit that or you could leave it in. It's pretty rock and roll. But in fact, one of the things my bass professor that this we talked about Staples High School before being one of the top music high schools in the country, which it is. I had 13 music classes and nothing else. I had a note for gym. I didn't have to go to gym, PT. And I had to take one science, chemistry, which I didn't go 40 days in a row, and I still got a D minus or something, didn't fail because it was obvious I was into music and that's all. I had music theory, orchestra, choir, honor choir, glee club, more music theory, and then lessons. I mean, that would normally cost a fortune. So one of the tips that my bass teacher, he had a combo that played at the country club on weekends because he taught classical string contrabass, and but he's also a great guy, and he knew what was going on. And he said, we were talking about me going to college, of course, and so I went in on the train with my double bass, which is like as big as I have an organ. It's a very ungainly thing, and went into New York City, got an audition for Juilliard, got accepted. That's very prestigious, which I expected to do, and which he expected me to do too. But then he said he knew that I was in bands and I was, rocking, and he said, here are probably two options to consider. One, go to music school, get a degree, and in 10 years you'll be the second chair bassist in the Cleveland Symphony Orchestra, because there's always somebody better. And he says, or hit the road and basically have some fun. It's all the pussy you can eat. I mean, that's the same life lesson that Ronnie Hawkins gave the band before they joined Bob Dylan. He said, come out with me. I'll teach you how to have a lot of fun and all the pussy you can eat. And that was basically my motivation.
When you left Rainbow,
Yeah.
what did you have in mind? What did you think you were going to do?
Oh, that took a while to figure out. I was fired twice, and the third time I left. Richie was a difficult human being, and I have nothing against Richie. He's fine, super, but he was impossible to get along with in the 70s. He's much better now, but in the 70s, I mean, he's kind of notorious for being. But I won't say anything bad about him ever. But he was a real dick to me at that time in those years, and I was a kid, and I was probably cocky. I read a quote that said, "Cozy Powell called me cocky." Cozy Powell being the cockiest human I've ever met in my life. So whatever. So I did Rainbow Rising, and then went on tour. We recorded on stage, and then we were back in France to do Long Live Rock and Roll, the studio follow up to Rainbow Rising, and I left in the middle. Things just got very tense and awkward and weird, and I just took off and went back to California, and I didn't have any plans. I mean, sure, I'm gonna, the suite flew out to meet me. They wanted me to join the suite, and no, glam rock or pop or whatever, and I don't look good in satin. Or maybe I did then, but uh, and I went on the road with Buddy Miles for a month, which is a trip. I mean, it was drugs and guns, basically, like really like kind of a violent, bad vibe. And uh, then a guy who I'd met here in Germany, where I now lived here for 45 years, a guy sent me a telegram. Remember those?
Yeah.
Yeah. A piece of paper with, hello, Tony, stop. Can you come to Munich? Stop. Piano recording, stop. And so, yeah. And I sent me back, send me the ticket, stop. And so I got the plane ticket one way, asshole. And August 11th, 1978, I was in Munich then. And this guy was also a train wreck. He was with a huge drug problem. He got arrested, got deported. He was Israeli national with dual citizenship, and then they let her back in the country. But a train wreck of a guy. But I got to see Europe. I mean, I'd seen it, but I got to live in Europe, and immediately found a recording studio in Frankfurt that would let me use the piano at night after the day's sessions were done, and like go in at midnight with my little cassette recorder and just record myself, using the studio piano, which I like finessed into being able to have some studio time and start looking for a direction. My first direction was I was pretty much not influenced, but interested in electronic music, and I did a bunch of instrumental recordings, like. Well, they sound like, actually they don't sound anything at all like Kraftwerk, but like electronic music, and did that until 1981. By which time from the end of 78 to 81, 2.5 years, say, and then I got signed by a record deal in Germany and put out a awful record, my first record.
Do you know it's awful when you put it out?
Oh, I probably thought it was Sergeant Pepper. What do you mean? No,
Okay.
no, nobody thinks anything's awful. If I thought it was awful, I would have put it out. But
Okay.
in retrospect, yeah, it's awful. Played all the instruments myself, uh, very, very nearly, which I'm really grateful for all this free studio time. I learned I was a bass player anyway, but electric bass is different than a stand-up bass, and I always could play campfire guitar, but lead guitar is different. And I learned all this stuff, and I had a great education. Even 10 years later, that wouldn't have been possible. Even in the beginning of the '90s, if somebody put money into you going into the studio, you had maybe two shots, but basically one shot. You record something, and if it's not a hit or receive great critical acclaim, you're out of there. So I got to dick around as much as I wanted to, and basically get a complete education, and how to cut tape, which is all analog, and how to engineer, and how to make records.
What I find interesting is throughout your life, your love of playing piano or keyboards
Yeah.
has gotten you into situations like, did you not practice in the church, your local church, when you were
Yeah.
growing
Oh,
up?
you've been Googling me. You've been spying. Yes, I did. In
and
those,
and the fact that
yeah.
you have the access to the studio and
It's a charmed existence that I've had in as far as being in the right place at the right time, and I'm a really good bullshitter as well. And I mean, I could, I think it was Brad Pitt that said, I love this quote, as I'm the same way. He said, "Drop me off at the train station in any town in America, and within 20 minutes, I'll have everything: weapons, drugs, girls, anything." And then I'm pretty much the same. But yeah, I kept stepping into these situations. So as it happens, I really hadn't planned to be a singer songwriter. I was just mostly interested in electronic music. And a guy that ended up producing my first few albums, who was the owner of the studio where I was working, produced other bands as well. And he signed, it was a girl group in LA that, based on their looks, actually, because it was like a Milli Vanilli thing. And in fact, they didn't even sing. They had a session singer sing it. It was all a hoax. But he said, write some songs for these girls. So, okay, I go in and I was singing them. And one of them was I Won't Be Home Tonight, my first Billboard Hot 100 hit. And one of them was West Coast Summer Nights, which was a hit in America. And I sang them as demos for these girl band. And there was another producer 50 miles away who I was buddies with, friends with, and I played him this stuff in his studio. And he says, "And these are what?" I said, "These are demos for a girl group." He said, "Are you crazy? This shit's great." And I don't know. I said, "Yeah, what do you think?" He says, "Hey, make a solo album." Ah, well, I'm already making records. He says, "Yeah, you're making, you know." beep boop beep boop electronic music records. We'll make a real record, write some songs with words. So that got me going there.
Interesting how you had no thoughts of writing your own stuff and singing your own stuff.
Singing, writing for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah,
Okay. And then so when this person tells you this is really good stuff,
yeah.
all of a sudden your life changes.
Nah, not really. I was living in a 2 room apartment in Frankfurt, Germany, and my life didn't change for a few years after. This was 1982, 81, 81, and then or something like that. Over 40 years ago.
I mean, and change in a way that your focus has changed a little bit. Now you're
Yeah,
thinking, oh, I can
yeah,
write my own stuff.
yeah, yeah. Not only that, I can play it all, including drums, if I have to.
Right.
If I have, I mean, I'm like a one man outfit here,
So,
ready to go.
and you've done that many times over
Yeah,
the years.
yeah,
Is I would see the advantage of that because you basically lay down the tracks the way you hear them.
yeah.
But I would see the disadvantage being that maybe other people can bring in other ideas.
Absolutely, absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. There's pluses and pros and cons to everything. And one thing is that when you're doing everything yourself or with, I had an engineer who later worked with Roger Waters. His name was Nigel Jobson, and we did all the first. He was even younger than me, and we were just like in a bubble, and you get into this echo chamber, and you don't get any outside influences. And if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room, basically. And you need to work with really, really clever, talented, inventive, creative people. So yeah, I mean that's absolutely a good point.
But a couple of years later, you're in a unique situation where you have your solo career,
Yeah,
and then you also have the Planet P project.
yeah,
Who, the Planet P project, in a way, makes sense because of your background with electronic music.
yeah,
But you do your solo album, and they're both you have release in, I guess, within the year of both
yeah.
of them, and they both chart.
Well, I had let's see, the first one that charted was I Won't Be Home Tonight. That was '82. And then Some Tough City, which was '84. And then in '83 was the first Planet P. And in '84 was also the second Planet P, which was Pink World. So all kinds of shit going on, yeah. And all kinds of backroom deals because the David Geffen Records had signed Planet P originally. And then I made an enemy over there of the A&R guy that actually changed the music industry for the worse, in my opinion. But anyway, I made the wrong enemy. He traded me to Irving Azoff at MCA, who went on to manage the Eagles, and like a baseball player. I didn't have anything to say about it. I didn't know anything about it, and all of a sudden, I'm not on Geffen anymore. I'm on MCA, and Pink World and Blue Highway and Some Tough City all came out on MCA, and the only one that came out on Geffen was a Planet P, the project, the first, the eponymous one. And all these, I always think of politics of the electoral conventions and primary conventions, like fat old guys with cigars. I wasn't allowed to be in Planet P videos because that would like muddy the waters, as if the waters weren't so muddy. I mean, the whole thing was like a joke, and I thought it was funny. It was funny, and who's this guy and who's this guy? What are you really? Well, how many think you want me to be? Want me to be John Lord for a month? I can do that. But I tell you about the songwriting. The Planet P came very, very natural to me to write kind of outer space uh, type concept albums, say concept albums, as opposed to albums that are about interpersonal relationships or telling stories. And I mean, when we were recording Rainbow Rising, I was up in my hotel room listening to Born to Run. That was the same year. And when we were recording Long Live Rock and Roll, that was 1977. I was listening to Rumors, Fleetwood Mac. I was always into songs, and both paths seemed completely natural to me. They still do, and I did a lot of film music that also seemed natural, TV scoring, and that was. I mean, I don't work very hard. Uh, I mean, if something's hard, I basically might. No, I don't do hard. I mean, something might be tricky or a little difficult, but if something's like hard or out of my wheelhouse, as they say, I don't do it. So for one reason or other, I have a big wheelhouse.
But at an early age, you have quite a bit of success
Yeah,
touring with Rainbow, and then also
yeah,
doing your solo thing, and then you have two solo things that are charting.
yeah.
You have records that go on the charts, hit records. What is a hit record to you? Because you,
One that I think is well made because that's completely subjective. I mean, okay, a strong indication is a hit record was "A Fine Fine Day" was #1 in American radio. Oh, okay, that's a hit record. Okay, I got it. But a successful record is one where I look back on it and say, yeah, not bad. I pretty much ticked all the boxes on that one. I like the lyric, I like the vocal, I like the performances, I like this. Because at the end of the day, I make music for myself. If you like it, that's great. If you don't like it, that's great too. I don't even care because it's so subjective, you know. If you don't like the Spice Girls, have fun with the Spice Girls, you know.
but you've had success in that these things charted pretty high on U.S. and I guess European radio.
Yeah,
But that's not necessarily say they were the best songs you ever wrote. There's a whole machinery that goes on behind the scenes.
yeah, sure.
How do you view that?
I've published 1,100 songs,
Jeez.
and best, like I said, that's subjective. The best songs, the ones that I feel are most accomplished or came closest to achieving what I wanted to achieve, to tell the story in a dynamic, interesting, slightly sophisticated way you probably have never heard. It's all subjective. So I mean, I don't have this big. I don't get that philosophical about any of this. It's just because it's not over yet either. I'm still alive. You
Right.
know, I'm still here.
Does it surprise you that some of the songs have the longevity of some of the songs? Like when I listen to Why
Yeah,
Me, I mean, you could
yeah.
in the '80s you could have said, "Oh, this could be dated," but I can hear it today and it doesn't seem dated to me.
I tell you what. From I get I live off publishing royalties. That's what I live off of. And Why Me is popular. It's on. America has it, everywhere, but Japan, Korea, South Africa, Israel, Australia, Canada, America, Germany, all over Europe, just 27 EU countries, all of them, it's everywhere. So, and it actually it does not sound dated. It sounds pretty fresh, you
Hmm.
know. I mean, I tell you what, if you read Hemingway sounds dated. Elmore Leonard never sounds dated. If you read To Have and Have Not or A Call to Arms or A Farewell to Arms by Hemingway, you say, well, this guy's obviously writing about the Spanish Civil War, and he's obviously in the 1930s and 40s, and it reads dated. But Elmore Leonard was writing from the 50s on, and anything you read from him, he started off with westerns and he went into crime. It's never dated. It's just a trick he had to make it always seemed to stay relevant. And uh, as surprising as it is, I tell you what's relevant is Rainbow. I mean, most of your run of the mill early hard rock groups. I mean, we were more prog because of the keyboards, but hard rock. It don't get half the Rainbow gets so much attention in terms of like fan mail and exposure, or how many people actually listen to that album. I mean, Metallica did covered Terror Woman. All this stuff. That's in a way gratifying, and in a way it's puzzling.
How did your production work start? Is it just because you were in the studio a lot and you were good at doing your own stuff that other people asked you?
Yeah, basically, yeah. I had huge hit single over here that wasn't released in the States. It was a theme song for a mini series, Christmas 1989, and that opened lots and lots of doors for me. People would start calling me, and a guy that's his name's Peter Maffei, but that won't say anything much to a North American audience. But he's sold 50 million records in German language, and he's had more number one albums than anybody. This is Guinness Book. He's had 22 number one albums. I mean, the Beatles didn't, neither did Michael Jackson or the Stones or anybody. And he found me. He'd heard A Fine Fine Day. This was in '84. He was down in Bavaria, and he drove up to the studio I was in Frankfurt, and basically said, "You want to, produce me?" After he brought a bottle of whiskey. We sat at the piano, played all day, and then he's a great guy. I love the guy. He's still my best buddy, or a pal. So pals forever. And he says, and what he was looking for was somebody with kind of a rock and roll sensibility, which is what I have. And he is a great songwriter, great singer, German language. So I brought the American sensibility. I spoke German, which is, some people, you'd be surprised how many people are too lazy. They move to a foreign country and they take that country with them. You got to assimilate. And that opened a lot of production doors too. And all of a sudden, Joe Cocker's calling, or Chris Norman from Smokey's calling, and lots of German acts, and uh, movie companies, they want a soundtrack and this and that. So
Germany has a really decent music industry still.
number three in the world. It's America, Japan, and then Germany.
So did you ever think twice about staying in Germany? Like, did the fact that you left the North American market, was that ever a hindrance, or did it not matter?
I didn't. First of all, I didn't care, but second of all, I never ever thought about moving away from Germany because I started having children, and I got and wives, plural, and I mean, I can't leave three. I have three now. They're from their 40s down to the late 20s, but you can't just take off and leave kids somewhere. And I definitely wasn't going to drag them over to California or wherever, And I had assimilated, and I know what you're asking. It's like I never really care. I actually didn't care. I didn't care about money. I don't care about being famous. It's more of an embarrassment, a hindrance, let's say, than anything else. To be like recognized on the street, which I am here, but I don't think I would be in America. It's been too long. And I mean, I've always had a studio in my house since I figured I could do it. So it could be actually done. Uh, that it wasn't any magic to it. It just needed like a basic investment, and then you could do everything the way you wanted to without waiting on somebody to open a door, or throw you out when you got too loud or whatever. And it all seemed very, very organic to me and natural. My whole life has seemed very organic and natural to me. So
With all that you've done, and you said from the age of 5 you thought you defined yourself as a musician,
yeah,
did you ever question that?
yeah. I might have been a marine biologist, and I might have been an astronomer. I was deeply interested in both of them, and then I might have been a novelist and a fiction, an author, but fiction. And the thing is that I spent so long writing haikus, which would be a song lyric. It's definitely an art to put emotion and information with rhyming ends, and it's such an art to write a 3-minute song and have it actually say something meaningful. I mean, why me is an astronaut that has a panic attack, you know, as they're counting down. There's never been another song like that, and it's a wacky song. And a lot of my songs are tongue in cheek, and a lot of them are really serious. But as far as different career paths, I mean, yeah, I could have done anything, but this is what clicked first.
And
I didn't have to go to college.
it also allowed you to do many different things, whether it be film scores,
Yeah,
producing, and
yeah. Well, that's basically, but that's basically living in recording studios, And when you're doing a film score, you got one screen with a movie, another screen with your what you're recording, and surrounded by banks and banks of equipment and an engineer, an assistant, and that's all basically the same thing. Like living in a recording studio and for whatever end result, if it's the same with producing other artists. I produced Jose Carreras, the opera singer. I mean, and the genre is absolutely not important to me. It just has to be good, and it's, of course, that's subjective. So as good as I would define good, but it has to have to have some cultural relevance, something that resonates with me. And then, I don't care if it's I produce Motorhead and have a lot of fun, or whatever, or Rush, or Sting. It doesn't matter. Or if I could, I produce Harry Belafonte, who I think, if I didn't misread, he left
I'm
us.
afraid he did.
Yeah,
Well, you said before that it was easy for you to write a concept album in the electronic field, like in Planet P.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and then you said less so about writing personal things. The Lucky Us album is pretty personal.
That's my best record. If that's completely subjective, but I would call that my most successful record
Oh, sorry. I'm curious as to why you think it's the best album, just because you're playing just
because it
as.
ticks all the boxes. Because it ticks all the boxes. It says things that every word of it's true. Every word of it's from personal experience, or very close personal secondhand experience, if you know what I mean. I mean,
Yeah.
not hearsay. And it did exactly what I wanted it to do. Lucky Us started off just like every other album, with drums and bass and guitars and electric guitars and choirs and bells and whistles in the kitchen sink, and ended up, it took 4 years to make, and with about 40 songs, and ended up as being piano and vocal with some orchestration, some light orchestration. And before you called me, or before we started talking, I was outside mowing the lawn. It's June here. It's a beautiful day. And I was reminded of the parable of the Japanese gardener. The Japanese gardener goes out, and his mission for the day, or his goal is not to add anything, plant another bamboo shoot or another flower, but to take something away. And if you know how they have these musical streams going through these stone gardens,
Hmm.
if when the gardener moves a stone, he gets a different tone out of it when he places the stone. If it pleases him today, it might not please him tomorrow, and he moves it back or moves it somewhere else. And Rick Rubin said pretty much the same thing. He said his first production credit wasn't producer; it was reducer. And like I said, this is why I consider Lucky Us to be my most realized work, is because it's the simplest. And I spent a little bit of time loading it up like a regular rock/pop, whatever, singer songwriter record, and then a couple of years taking stuff away, and changing one word in a lyric, just like moving one stone in a little Japanese garden. And uh, that was rewarding to me. I mean, I'm sure it puts any rock fan to sleep. It's all subjective, of
Right.
course.
But I mean, there's some really beautiful songs in there, and the playing is pretty
I
intimate.
think so too. Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. Intimacy is really difficult to get on. Oh, I'm going to say tape. It's not tape anymore, but you know what I mean. Uh, to get an intimate moment, especially as self-produced and self-engineered as that is, with no feedback at all. You're in your echo chamber, you're in your bubble. That's that takes a lot of experience and a lot of concentration. Like, why did you take this and not this? This piano part and not that piano part? Because I played them all many times, and these are judgment calls, And when I make enough good judgment calls on a song, it ticks a box for me, and I say, okay, good job. I'll take it. Not awful. Doesn't suck.
But it seems like when you started the project, you had something else in mind. And
Yeah, oh yeah,
then
just a regular Tony
and
Carey album.
was
Yeah.
it that while you're working on it, you thought, well, this isn't really hitting the right spot, and then you start taking things away and
I didn't know what the problem was, except that first of all, it sounded like a bunch of stuff I'd done before, and uh, no two of my albums sound the same, and there's such a radical difference between Some Tough City and Pink World. I mean, they don't sound like they could possibly be the same artist or even the same singer, because I used two different affectations of my voice. I mean, I wasn't guessing. I was going for that, and yeah, I mean, yeah, I pretty much, yeah. I didn't When it's right, you know it's right, and if even if you can't figure out what isn't right, you say, well, this is okay. I like the lyric, I like the chords, I like the melody. Why am I yawning? Why is there not enough tension in this? Why, whatever. And in this case, in my case, in that situation, uh, the answer was, hey, just throw all that shit away. You don't need a bass. You don't need a guitar. You got a piano, got your voice, and you got my orchestra in a box, which is possible these days. So
how much does that classical music training that you had with the bass at an early age influence what you do today?
a lot, a lot as far as appreciating the sound palette. If you like a painter's palette, as far as what colors are interesting. I mean, heavy metal, it would be primary school colors. It'd be yellow, blue, red. It'd be hard rock, very basic, with very little shading. Uh, and the lyrics would be "C spot run." I mean, it's like using the elementary school, uh, milking the uh, elementary school analogy to death, metaphor to death. Um, I really like woodwinds. So the on Hawkeye Road, which is the first song on Lucky Us, that's an oboe. It's not really an oboe; it's a computer, but it's a sampled oboe. It has an oboe vibe, and I really like woodwinds, and I really like the way Rimsky-Korsakov used woodwinds in Scheherazade. That was one of my first memories of music at all. It was my father's recording of Scheherazade, and I really like the way Mahler used woodwinds. Beethoven was big strings and big brass, but when he got quiet, then he'd use the woodwinds, and those are always the parts that got me. In a symphony, you'll have a usually it's not written in stone, but say four movements. The first movement is da 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 da, Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. I found that the best part of most of my favorite symphonies is the second 10-minute bit. Like the second song on the A side. You know, the B side of the hit. The hit is da 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 da. But but the loud, dynamic, fast, pulsating, any adjective you want to use. But then, oh, gee, I'm having a senior moment. Who wrote New World Symphony? Dvorak, the Czech or Slovak composer. He came over to America and he wrote his ninth symphony. It's called Symphony for the New World, which was for him the New World. And I swear, in the second movement of that, I hear California. I hear Around the Gold Rush, and it is like 1848, 1849, something like that. It's right in that golden moment when the world was wide open, and in his use of woodwinds in the gorgeous second movement. So that's New World Symphony by Dvorak, second movement, kids. I can hear California, and I can see the mountains that I grew up next to. Uh, did that make any sense?
It does. Have you ever written a symphony?
Nah, that's not. It's for the same reason I never wrote a novel. I have a self-imposed restriction. It takes so long to even come out to acceptable quality, just subjectively. I mean, to meet my standards in one form. I don't need to jump around. I mean, unless I was producing, I'd produce a symphony in a second. That'd be fabulous. That's all about mic placement. That's not like what parts they're going to play because that's already in the sheet music, but dynamics.
Right.
But I found that it's, and I'll never say I mastered this because I haven't. Nobody ever does. Nothing's ever finished. But getting a 3 to 5 minute pop rock, whatever, however you want to describe it, song that everything works. The bridge it works. There's tension. There's surprise. There's sarcasm. All the Planet P stuff is. My tongue so far up my cheek it looks like I'm chewing tobacco, and just being acceptably good in one discipline, that's enough. That's enough for me.
But I wanted something like Pink World. I
Yeah,
know it's songs, but it's a
yeah,
concept. So in a way,
yeah.
isn't it like a symphony and from beginning,
Okay,
middle to
if you
end?
put well, it's like a
Yeah.
musical. It's like Cats,
Uh,
it's like Phantom of the Opera. What's a really dumb? It's like Hamilton. That's what it is. Because that was a huge hit.
that's for sure.
It's
When you're
yeah,
writing though, is it always written about a project or for the project? So let's say you're working on Lucky Us,
yeah,
you work on 10,
yeah,
15, 20 songs.
yeah.
Do songs just
It
come
is.
out of nowhere and then think,
No, sorry to interrupt, but I think I know what I'm going to ask you. It is that in the beginning it did. I would just like random, shoot for the moon here, miss, shoot for Saturn, maybe hit it. But uh, experience has taught me to try to stay focused. So if I'm writing a 10 song album, or these days it's usually 14 song album, these days it's singles. There's no more albums, kids. But whatever. In my career, it was the album format, which was either 10 to 12 songs or 20 to 25 songs on a double album. It's pretty much good to stay. In one sense, all of my albums are concept albums. Every album on Some Tough City, like Fine Fine Day, is about my Uncle Sonny who doesn't exist, but who just got out of jail. And A Lonely Life is about a guy running a call girl ring out of his taxi cab. And he's using a CB radio, which I don't think anybody ever picked up on. This is the internet. I mean, I wrote the internet age. I wrote this before there were cell phones. And I think it's I think it's good to try to stay in a vibe when you're doing something. I mean, for me that works, and not be distracted by I could write a song about Elon Musk is going to transplant us to Mars and be the seed of the rest of civilization after the asteroid hits. Well, that's interesting to me, but wouldn't have any place on Lucky Us, and Lucky Us is personal stories. So I'm sitting out. Basically, the preparation for that was sitting with my wife on the porch in the garden, my yard, which is not a Japanese garden. It's too much fucking bamboo. Uh, and I got to mow the lawn, and I'm an old man. And anyway, just talking about things that memories that I had of my father, my family, my mother, things, the start of Blessings. That's a song called Always Tomorrow, which is basically my life history, and every word's true. So I could write a song about the use of fungicide to treat athlete's foot in horses, or I could stay in the lane I'm in and just keep going. And I found that's more productive.
but that kind of insinuates that writing a song is a process that you sit down and work on ideas, as opposed to you driving down the highway and something coming into your mind.
That doesn't happen. No, that doesn't happen to me. If there's no two songwriters write the same. I've never had that. I've never had a song like come into my head, and all I had to do was wake up for the dream and hoped I had a pencil, that kind of thing. It's work, and my particular workflow, Elton John's workflow. He gets 10 pages of lyrics from Bernie, sits at the piano and writes to the lyrics, and edits them out and repeats things, and has a chat with Bernie. Says, I don't like and they collaborate. But Elton basically writes music to an existing script, text. I don't. I write the melody, and you get it feeling the way I think a song should feel, and that always, eventually, even if it's like pulling teeth sometimes, but it will always suggest a lyric to me. And another way people write songs, Metallica, I love the way they write songs. They'll put down a banging piece of of music, and James would just go out and he'd just start singing. Not he didn't know anything at all, and he'll find some words that fit together because sounding right is also good. It can't be stupid, but sounding right is part of it too. It has to sound like a song and the Metallica songs. And James would just dick around with just singing. And, he's with his tight little crew. He's not embarrassed. There's nothing to embarrass him. Everybody he knows that work. That's his way. Jay-Z's way, I'm sure you know this because it's been actually talked about. He'll get his loop. Timberland will bring him a loop. And he'll say, wow, I love that. And it just turn it way up like he's in a club, sit at the mixing desk and just think for 20 minutes, half an hour. I don't know how long it takes him. I've heard 2 minutes. I've heard all kinds of crazy stories about Jay-Z. And then he would never write anything down. And then he'll go out and do a take, and that'll be the song. And it's done. And it's Jay-Z's brilliant lyricist and rapper, and his flow and his musicality floor me. But he never writes anything down. And this is the kind of mind the guy's got. And if they say, let's do another take, or he'll say, I want to do another take, he'll sing the same thing that he didn't write. He remembers it. I mean, this is unheard of for me. I sit there sweating right there with pencil and paper. Sometimes I get cocky and I write with pen and paper because I don't make mistakes. And I'll write reams and reams of things. And when I go to sing, I'll have these reams lined up in front of me, all these lines that tell some kind of story, and then I'll learn how to sing it and which lines I'm going to use and which ones I don't, and what rhyme I don't like, and what rhyme I change. And there are interdynamic things in a line, like if you rhyme the fourth syllable of a line with the fourth syllable of two lines later. That's very subtle poetry, but it's not moon, June, spoon, gloom, doom. It's I try to tick those boxes, but especially the Jay-Z example just floors me. That I've heard this from a lot of people, and I've seen Rick Rubin even gave an interview on YouTube, and he says he just can't believe it. He just sits there and listens to his loop, then he goes in and fucking nails it in a take without writing anything down. Then he does it again. Man,
What's your favorite part of being a musician? Is it the recording? Is it the writing? Is it the playing?
it's a freedom. It's a freedom. I never had a boss. I never had a real job. I could always be late or not late. I mean, not always, but I pick and choose when I want to do what. That's the best part about being any kind of artist at all, is to pick and choose what projects I'm going to do. Musicians even better. If I was an actor, then you got all these people dependent on you, and you got to get up early. Well, I get up early anyway, but you know what I mean. You got to make it every day because there's 80 people waiting for you, and it costs $1 million a day or whatever, and you're on location somewhere, and doing Lord of the Rings. You can't just fuck off and not show up. So be a musician and not part of a band, but like I am the project in me. That allows me such a freedom in my life to work when I want to work, and I used to live in the studio. I used to do 20-hour days, take a nap on the studio couch, and then wake up Nigel, my engineer. We'd drink some coffee, and then something a little stronger, and go right back to work. And we're lugging 2-inch tape boxes. Those things were heavy, and I learned how to cut tape, I learned how to splice tape, learned how to use all this. That was just a kid in a sandbox. Just complete freedom. That's the best part about being a musician, is the freedom.
My final question to you: do you have a philosophy that you live by with your music?
Yeah, my philosophy is, or mantra or whatever, is not just music. It's my philosophy of life. And this is glaringly obvious, but a lot of people, unfortunately, don't pick up on it. You have 10 minutes ago or yesterday, or the past, you can't change it. In the future, you get hit by a bus. You don't know. Nobody knows anything what's going to happen. Remember Baba Ram Das? He was a hippie philosopher, I guess, in the 70s or 60s even. Be Here Now. He wrote a book called Be Here Now. be in the moment. This is the only moment that counts. So that means what I told you earlier in the interview, that doesn't count. You know, anything up till this point, nothing counts because I can't take it back. I can't change it. And I don't know what's going to happen in the next 5 seconds. Nobody knows ever. So that would be my philosophy just of life in general is try to be happy with what you got. Don't bitch. Bitching's for pussies. And try to stay centered and be aware that this is your life. This is where you are. Put down the suicide vest, kids. And there's no virgins up there. And just be cool and try to not hurt anybody. That's really important. And everybody hurts somebody sometimes, especially if you have kids. So you have regrets. Try to fix things that are within your power to fix that you've fucked up, you've done wrong. Make amends if you can. Sometimes it's better just let it go and don't, because it would exacerbate the problem by going back to it. Just your general golden rule stuff, like treat others the way you want to be treated, but live in the moment. That's Uncle T's advice for the week, and it was free.
Tony, it's a real pleasure meeting you. I've enjoyed your music for years, and I was thrilled that you agreed to do this, and thank you so much for doing this.
My man, Mako, are those books or is that music on your back wall?
CDs.
Wow, unbelievable. I'm a book guy, and I read like 4 a week, and have since I could read. And I finally got an ebook, a reader, and I would go on tour with an empty duffel bag that would be full by the time, and just lugging around all these books. We moved from I spent 8 years in Spain. I bought a place in Spain and on the island of Mallorca, just like because I could, basically, because my daughter was newborn. She wouldn't have to go to school till she was 6.
What a good life.
Yeah, man. I'm oblivious, but thank God. I've never done it. I'm getting to is I tried to donate 25,000 books which my lifetime collection. Nobody would take them.
Wow.
The English, there's an English university here for expatriates. They said, well, if you pay us, we'll haul them away. And with heavy heart, I wasn't going to take 15, I don't know, like 18 walls as big as your CD wall. I mean, 3 rooms, I wasn't going to take that shit down to Spain, they're paperbacks or whatever. So with heavy heart, I threw them away. And since then, I don't have a bookcase. I used to have rooms of bookcases like that. I have a reader. It can hold up to 4,000 books, and I've got at least 4,000 books on my computer. I pop them in, pop them out, wait for the next thing. It's heaven. I don't have a cell phone. I don't have a smartphone. And I never will. I hate the things. But I do have an e-reader.
Well,
and you have CDs. Oh my God.
Which is also worthless, but it's priceless to me.
Of course. Well, subjective. I mean,
yes.
Of course.
Thank you so much for doing this. It's a real pleasure meeting you.
Yeah, same here. Thank you.